Welcome to Fresh Press, a podcast by Juicing.Systems, where we help beverage producers streamline their process, cut labor cost, and maximize efficiency with automated juicing solutions. Today, we're diving into carbonation, specifically how the FizzWizz can help you achieve perfect, consistent carbonation while saving time and CO2. So let's get into it. Yeah. We're excited to talk about the FizzWizz by Brewing, an automated carbonation system designed to bring precision, consistency, and efficiency to beverage production, basically taking out the guesswork out of carbonation, reducing CO2 use, minimizing product loss, and ensuring perfect results every time. To start, Guy, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your role in BrewWizz.
Yeah. Okay. So my name's Guy Tipton. I am a technology developer, originally from the other side of the pond, from the UK. Been in Canada a long time now, 18 plus years. And yeah, most of my career has been designing electronics with consequence, I've done things all over the place, oil and gas, energy sector and stuff like that. But around 10, 11 years ago, I was involved with a startup brewery called Boxing Rock, which is actually won Brewery of the Year last year at the Canadian Brewing Awards. And yeah, during that whole situation, when you've invested money and time and sweat equity, the people that were making beer were very good at making beer, but unfortunately, getting the bubbles in the beer and the right amount of bubbles in the beer was causing us quite a lot of problems. And when you've invested a large amount of money into a small batch brewery and a lot of your products going on the floor or you're covered in it,
right?
My technology developer brain got working, and I really delve down into finding a solution, and that's how we, that's why I started developing the FizzWizz. So that's my background. That's why I'm in beer, basically.
I mean, that's great, right? Any kind of solution that came from a problem that you had personally, that's had a, that the person's felt that problem, that pain point, you felt it, so you created something that actually solved the problem, right?
That's right. Initially, I just thought it was us. Like honestly, I just thought because like Boxing Rock is made up of a bunch of engineers. So there's two chemical engineers, and we assumed it was us. We just assumed we weren't very good at putting the putting the bottles in. So I didn't know it was a business originally. I have to be honest. It was and that's part of the reason why it was called FizzWizz, because it was a bit of a joke, and the one of the brewers, his name's Henry, was like, he hasn't even got a name, so I just got a Sharpie and Wallace and Gromit style just wrote FizzWizz 2000 over it. And as time went on and you do collaboration brews, that sort of thing, like people, it used to be like a metal box. Just used to be like a metal box thing, and people would see it and then everybody have a joke about it, but sometime after we'd been up and running, people started asking me if I'd make them a FizzWizz, and that's when it started to become a business. So yeah.
If you can give us like a high level breakdown of like what is the FizzWizz product?
Yeah, the FizzWizz product basically and gives you a guided procedure on how to carbonate any beverage, right? As it turns out, as I say, we initially started this in beer, but we carbonate all sorts of stuff now. So the first problem was the carbonation stone. And the carbonation stone, every carbonation stone is different, and you'll hear beverage makers talk about the wetted pressure, and it's a very hard thing to calculate. It's a very complicated thing to calculate. So I took a totally different approach to that, where I started talking about the carbonation stone as being hydrophobic or hydrophilic, and that sounds like complicated, but actually it's just where the bubble is manufactured. It's whether the bubble is manufactured inside the stone or on the surface of the stone. And
Mm,
so that was the first problem to solve. And so instead of talking about pressures, I started talking about how fast you can flow a stone in cubic feet per hour, and just completely changed the way we looked at that. So once we solve that problem, once that problem is solved, next thing you've got to do is like monitor temperatures and pressures extremely closely. And there's all sorts of like really good technology to do that. And as I'm an instrument engineer, that was quite easy for me to come up with low cost pressure transducers and low cost temperature sensors to do that. So as a result, you know, you now have a system that you can plug into your existing carbonation stones. You can plug into your regulator that's on the wall, and you can take a temperature measurement of your bright tank. And now you have something that can basically carbonate your beverage and do all the mathematics for you and stop it once it's actually reached its optimum carbonation level based on how fizzy that you've set it. Not sure if that quite answered your question.
no, no.
So,
Yeah, I mean, high level, it puts the
yeah.
bubbles in the drinks, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
No, no,
So
no, that's perfect. That's perfect.
yeah. Yeah.
What do you think sets the FizzWizz product apart from like other carbonation systems?
So yeah. So so if you take your standard like medium small batch type brewery, so like 30 barrel brew houses downwards, and you just think about like that economic scale, like how much revenue and stuff that builds. It's like not really in their budget range to go and buy an inline carbonation system for 20, 30, $40,000. It's not really in their budget range to do that. And the tanks that come, the tanks come with carbonation stones anyway. So why not put those to use, right?
Hmm.
So the difference between us is that we've taken a manual operation that everybody learns at brewing school or beverage school, and we've put a computer there and automated it. So everything you talk about, all the like volumes and temperature, they're all in the box. So these are all numbers that everybody understands, right?
Mm.
And so we've basically taken a very, very manual process, which is very hit and miss, and made a computer do it and packaged it in this little box that you can just hang on the tank that you're carbonating. So
Right.
so there isn't anything else like that on the market. Like that it was basically you do it manually by hooking your carb stone up to the regulator, or you buy an inline system. There was no halfway house. There was nothing in between. So this has filled a massive gap in the market. It's also made it affordable for anybody who's running like a 10 barrel brew house upwards. It's extremely affordable, and anybody below that, it's still affordable. It's just the payback will be a little bit longer.
Could you say that since it's automated, the machine kind of makes it simple for everybody? Before, without, if you're doing just the stone yourself, you kind of have somebody who's almost like an expert, like midway
Yeah,
scientifically, midway
yeah,
most like art, and then they have to be you're relying on that person to kind of tweak and set it
that's
to the
right.
right moment, and then maybe implementing this. The FizzWizz brings down the level of let's say education or experience that person needs to have to somebody who's just maybe an assistant that could set it up. Am I in the right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you've got the brewmaster or the head beverage maker, right? And they they have an idea of what the mouthfeel of that product's going to be, right? So then if it's a particular style of beverage, or say you take a light cider, maybe you want that carbonated very highly up like 2.9 volumes or something like that, right? There'll be the person that's making the beverage will know how that feels on the mouth, right? So So you could set the FizzWizz up to 2.8. You test it. Well, not quite what I want it to be. So then you set it to 2.9 and you're like, okay, that's perfect. And then that number now becomes part of the recipe sheet. And you can
Right.
give that to production, right? So it's not only it doesn't take like kind of the love away from the beverage. Like the beverage maker can get really intimate with the carbonation level, and then once they've nailed it, which they
Mhm.
could. So when you carbonate a beverage for the first time, we always say go low and go slow. So like you flow the CO2 slowly, and you set it to a bit lower than you think you want it to be, and then you test it. You tune it, you get it right in where you want it to be, and when those numbers are where you want them to be, which you can do on your first carbonation run, you write those on the recipe sheet, and now that goes to production. And production, every single time they run that, if they run your numbers, you will get the same result.
And can you give an example, like how would that process be without the FizzWizz?
So without the
More
FizzWizz,
manual. Yeah.
yeah. So without the FizzWizz, there's lots of different ways that people carbonate. Some people will like set the pressure regulator to like 2 psi, and then they'll go away for half an hour, and then they'll raise it to 4 psi, go away for half an hour, and they'll just keep slowly raising it. Some people put a bunch of head pressure on the tank, so they might put like 8 psi on the tank, on the head pressure, and then they'll put like 12 psi or 10 psi on the stone, right? And they'll just wait for the pressure to start raising at the top. So they've got to watch the dial and keep an eye on that dial. So there's lots of different ways that I've seen people carbonate, and there's usually two issues. There's really two issues. So sometimes people are like, we want to do it quickly because we've got to get this product out the door, right?
Hmm.
So they'll put a load of head pressure on the tank, and they'll put the CO2 in through the stone, and somebody's watching it, and maybe they get it carbonated in 2 or 3 hours, right? Some people will take the more step approach and do it slowly. But when everybody has to go home, you have to shut that tank in, right? And if it's
Right.
not carbonated, then you're going to have a crack at it again tomorrow morning, or you're just going to stay late until it is carbonated. And then once it is carbonated, what should that head pressure be? Because who knows at that point? Like, who knows what that head pressure should be, right? So that's a problem, because if the head pressure is too low, CO2 will start moving out of solution overnight, and that will make packaging a disaster in the morning. And if it's too high, then CO2 will go into solution overnight, and that will also make packaging a disaster in the morning, because now it will be overcarbonated, right? So the great thing about automating it is most of our clients will put the FizzWizz on at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and now the carbonation process is something that happens overnight.
Hmm.
So the FizzWizz just takes its time overnight. Nobody has to worry about it. If you do want to watch it, we have like an app. We have and it sends you alerts if you run out of CO2 or your glycol system breaks. It can
Right.
do stuff
Right.
like that. But the idea is you put it on late afternoon, it carbonates overnight, and you come in the morning at 8 o'clock, and it's ready for packaging. And it's taken all the stress away from it. The FizzWizz is working the night shift every night for you, right? And once it reaches equilibrium, once it's reached the right carbonation level, it'll shut the CO2 off, and then it will monitor that headspace. And if the temperature moves around like crazy, it'll make sure that it deals with the head pressure, so that we don't get destabilization of the product. We don't have CO2 coming out of solution. Once that CO2 starts moving out of solution when it's in the bright tank, like, you've got to wait an awfully long time for it to stabilize before you can package it. And brewers don't have that luxury. They can't wait a couple of days for
Right.
the bright tank No beverage maker can. Doesn't matter whether it's beer, cider, or whatever. You can't wait a couple of days for something to calm down before you start
Yes,
packaging.
right.
So the FizzWizz just keeps it calm. So it's a nice slow process that goes overnight, and then in the morning it's ready for packaging, and it's the product hasn't been stressed. It's just everything's perfect.
So that kind of, like I was saying, that kind of takes away the art and the finicky part away from the
Yeah,
process, makes it more efficient, makes it automated. And
yeah,
again, like you were suggesting, you do it overnight, so you're not
yeah,
waiting for it, and it's ready for the shift in the morning.
yeah.
Um, but there's nothing to worry about because it's connected to the internet, to the app. Any kind of drastic changes, anything will let you know. You can set your parameters to like what to
Mhm.
alert you, right?
Yeah,
So you don't have to worry about like, well, I'm kind of leaving it. There's nobody there. You'll get
yeah.
notifications.
That's right. Yeah, and you can we have a phone app and we have a desktop app. So if you want to a quick look, you want to look at a glance and just see everything's going okay, you can just use your phone. If you want to do detailed analysis of it, then you can look at the desktop, and we're always on hand to talk about that stuff too. So that's something that we do, particularly with people outside of like the cider and beer industry,
Mm.
like the like hard seltzers, that type of industry. We do help them with their carbonation process because generally that's not something that's covered in their education, whereas in beverage, in beer making and cider making, it's something that's covered in the education of that. So that's
Right.
something else we've noticed. Yeah.
I mean, I think we kind of communicated how it helps with improving consistency and efficiency. I don't know
Mhm.
more we could say about that. But particularly to the cider and, hard cider, soft cider,
Yeah.
sparkling juice, what can you say about the FizzWizz and how it particularly helps in compared to beer?
Sorry, compared to beer.
Not compared with
Uh,
like not thinking of beer, like for our
Okay.
cider and juicing systems that we do mostly work with
Yeah.
cider and sparkling juice.
Yeah. There's a number of things. I think if you're looking at the product quality, that's something that's really important in ciders. With ciders having different aromas, um, like some cider makers will put additive, certain additives, flavoring and aroma additives to try and
Hmm.
hit the tasting notes, and all of those are vulnerable to scrubbing. So, and that is if the CO2 is put in too hard into the tank and it creates any level of foaming at the top of the tank, then what's actually happening at that moment where the bubble breaks the surface is you're actually taking complexity out of the product. So you are actually removing aromatics, like flavors are actually getting taken out of the product, right? So that means that, something that, probably had one smell somewhere, by the time it ends up in the can and in the glass, now has something completely different
Right.
because it's been carbonated harshly, right? So that is something that we see a lot, and that problem comes from carbonation stones that are in this hydrophobic mode. This is where the bubble on the carbonation stone is being made by multiple pores, right? So you end up with a bigger bubble, right?
Mm,
That bigger bubble has lots of buoyancy in it, and it aggressively shoots to the top of the tank. And as it breaks the surface, it takes away proteins and aromatics. So so if you get the bubble really, really small, then there's no buoyancy in that bubble. So then it really struggles to get to
right.
the top, right? And then as every second it's in solution, if the beverage is nice and cold, then it's dissolving into solution. So barely none of that bubble makes it to the surface. So therefore, you don't break the surface. So therefore, you don't remove aromatics, right? And you don't remove flavors. So that is something that if you over-carbonate something as well, right, that CO2's got to come out of solution at some point. So if you over-carbonate something, then during the filling process, then you're going to get lots of foaming, right? And during that foaming, again, you're not only wasting product at that point, but you're also just getting rid of all the the cider makers artistic
Right.
style of the product. It's all coming out, and so then by the time you've got your can and the customer's got it, it's not only the carbonation level you don't want, but it also doesn't have the same flavor or tasting notes that had originally been put in it. So yeah, that is something that's like really important. So that's why a long a long slow carbonation using the FizzWizz really helps, because you don't scrub that stuff. You don't scrub all those nice aromatics and flavors out. And also, once you've reached the perfect equilibrium, it doesn't overcarbonate it. So then when you package it, it's not all frothing out on the cans as well.
No, I love that because yes, the fizz was going to help you save money and efficiency, not spilling and all that kind of stuff. But I think the most important is that you spend time creating a recipe that it's going to be your brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to, when a customer buys your product, they try it, they're going to fall in love with that, what it tastes like. And if it's all over the place every time they buy it, I mean, they might not keep buying it. And that's very important, right? Because you spend a lot of time, R&D, research and development to making a recipe. You want it to taste that way to the customer. So I think that's hugely important.
Yeah.
How easy is it to integrate the system into different beverage setups?
Yeah, so it's been designed. So it's been designed. Well, it's actually certified as a box with cords. That's its North American certification description. So it's just a box about this big. It's not very big, and we prefer it to be screwed onto a wall. But a lot of people will put them on trolleys. A lot of people will put a bit of rope through the top and hooks and hang it on the tanks. But the FizzWizz comes with a complete connection kit. So we use standard industrial push to connect fittings. They're all sanitary stainless steel, which is, I guess that's, I would say 80% of everybody's setup is like that. There are some hybrid setups, but for the most part, most of the industry are using these industrial push to connect type air hose fittings. So our product fits to that type of equipment, and it comes with all the hoses. You can specify extra length on hoses and that type of thing, but essentially it is one push to connect onto the CIP arm. That's where it reads the tank pressure. It's one push to connect onto the carbonation stone, and there is a temperature sensor that needs to go into a thermal well. And then the CO2 from the regulator goes into the FizzWizz. And then the FizzWizz tells you what to set the regulator to. Right. So if the FizzWizz doesn't have enough pressure, it will tell you to turn the regulator up. So the FizzWizz does all that back mathematics for you. So yeah, very, very quick. Maybe take you 2 minutes to connect it to a regular tank, not even.
As close as you can get as plug and play.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And the setups that I see that are nice. So say somebody has 2 or 3 bright tanks. so you don't need 3 FizzWizzes. You can have 1 FizzWizz, right? You really need as many FizzWizzes as carbonations you're running at any one particular time, right? So if you're just carbonating and then packaging, and that's you do that over 2 days, and then you're carbonating and packaging again, you just need 1 FizzWizz, right? You just hook it around the different tanks. So the best setups I've seen is where the FizzWizz is on the wall, like in the middle of where the bright tanks are, and they just click the hoses around, and then they just coil them up when they're not using them.
Right. Why don't we talk about ROI? Keep it brief. Let's hit them with some numbers. We talked about the artistry, and the product. So how does FizzWizz reduce product luster and packaging?
Yeah, so I've got a number of different case studies. So let's think about the packaging side of things, right? So the FizzWizz has a packaging mode too. So once you've reached carbonation, the bottling line or your canning line needs a certain pressure to push the beverage into the canning line and the bottling line. So the FizzWizz has a packaging mode which manages the head pressure and keeps it at exactly whatever the bottling line or canning line specification is for pressure, right? So so once you've carbonated properly, you've got the FizzWizz in packaging mode. The biggest costs are going to come from how many cans get to market. And so if you take a typical, so if you took like a 7-barrel system, for example, and they were experiencing about 3 to 4% short fills or cans that couldn't go to market. And then typically, if you're carbonated correctly and the FizzWizz is running the head pressure going to the packaging line, then typically you can expect to get that under 1. Most of my clients are running at like 0.5. So on like a 7-barrel system, that gives you like a payback on your investment in about a year. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're running if you double that, 15-barrel system, then your payback's in 6 months. And then, 30-barrel system, you can get payback in a couple of months.
Right.
So it really depends on how big your operation is. And that is just based, the biggest saving at the moment is like on the can and the wasted product. And we, on our return on investment calculations, it's very hard to put labor into it, because if you've got a 7-barrel, if you've got like a 5 or 7-barrel system, then honestly, your biggest savings are probably on your mental health, to be to be honest. It's just the reduction in the frustration of trying to carbonate something when there's like 17 other things that need your attention at that particular moment. When you've got like a 15 or a 30-barrel, once you get into that 15, 20, 30 barrel, you've got staff. You undoubtedly have staff, right? And at that point, as the head cider maker or brewer or beverage maker, you're looking to offload jobs that should be, relatively easy. And this, this will enable you to put the, carbonation into a job that's now relatively easy as opposed to very complicated.
Absolutely.
So when I talk about return on investment, at no point have we spoken about labor, or the reduction in frustration. We're just literally talking about cans. The savings on CO2, that's very difficult to calculate as well. The one case study that we did, so we did do a case study on a 30-barrel system, and where the client had, we measured we got a CO2 flow, digital flow meter, and we monitored every drop of CO2 that he put in his bright tank. And on CO2, the FizzWizz was around 30% more efficient on CO2 saving just on the carbonation level. But what was also interesting so we did it manual. We let them manually carbonate a product, and we measured all the CO2, and then we put the FizzWizz on and measured all the CO2, right? So they manually carbonated it. They used 30% extra CO2, and then they left the product with the wrong head pressure on all weekend, and wasted all their beer on Monday when they try to package it. So for that client, just by putting the FizzWizz in on that particular one meant that on the next packaging run, around $800 of extra product went to market from the previous competition. right?
Yeah. No, that's
So
perfect.
it's like one of those things, right? Like that brewer may have carbonated the week before perfectly, right? And said, "Wow, that's brilliant." But because he did it on the Friday and then went home for the weekend and left the wrong head
Hmm.
pressure on, Monday was a disaster, and he didn't quite know why,
Right.
but we did because we monitored everything, and that was how we were able to review it. That is like probably almost like a worst case situation, but I'm sure like the cider makers that are watching this or any brewers that might be watching this
Yeah.
have experienced that at least several times in the last 12 months.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. I think that I think we made a great case for the FizzWizz. I mean, we're sold. uh, what kind of little feedback people said about the FizzWizz that they're using it?
Yeah, so in our first 3 or 4 years, we noticed that a lot of our clients were winning awards,
Hmm.
and they were getting good tasting notes back. So that's like really in the detail.
Right.
Okay, so that's like, yeah, it's made a better product because we're not harshly carbonating the product. We're really looking after it. Um, our you know, a lot of people have spoken about morale, about like
Oh,
how people don't, that like packaging used to be such a challenge and like it used to be frustrating and there was a lot of shouting and stuff, and that
yeah.
kind of removed that. Um,
Less HR visits.
yeah, and then a lot of people have also, you know, just said it like the repeatability, the fact that it's the same every single time. So once they've got it dialed into the number that they want, like it's just they can just give it to anybody to do. And then using the cloud and the monitoring, people have been able to also detect when their carbonation stones are too dirty,
Hmm.
things like that. So we've had all sorts of unexpected feedback that we never expected to get. Like, so
Yeah, I mean, you don't put it aside, but put it right now aside the financial gain, right? The ROI. I think to me, the thing that stands out the most is that it'll stick to your recipe, right?
yeah,
When it won't mess up the recipe and the product, and
that's right.
the customer will end up with the same beverage every time. If you make a
Yeah,
tweak, it'll stick to that, and
it's a
there's no
tool.
guesswork on the other end. So I really appreciate that. I think that's the like the shining star of the product.